Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inspiring Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Pursue, a bespoke leadership coaching and development company with a mission to create, nurture and develop inspiring leadership across the global education sector and beyond. My name is Nicholas Mackay, Associate Professor, Certified Professional Coach and Director of Pursue, and I'll be your host as we bring you cutting-edge leadership stories from across the world, delving into the minds of recognised education and industry experts to find out about the challenges and main issues they are facing and to gain insights into inspiring leadership. In this series, we are proud to be in partnership with Independent School Management Plus, an international school magazine, the leading authority and voice for professionals in independent and international education worldwide. If you'd like to watch the video of today's podcast, please head over to schoolmanagementplus.com. We are also supported by the Federation of British International Schools in Asia, a diverse and inclusive community of 78 leading British international schools spanning 18 countries across the Asia region. So let's get on with today's episode, on which I'm really excited, being a big rugby fan, in which we welcome Sara Cox. Sara is a professional English rugby union referee. In 2016, she became the world's first professional female rugby union referee. And in 2018, she became the first female to referee a Premiership Rugby Cup match. With lots of internationals already under her belt, in 2020, she made a breakthrough into English rugby's Gallagher Premiership as an assistant referee for the Bath versus Wasps game, and is making her mark on the sport in both the men's and women's games. Sara, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem, Nick. Thanks very much for having me.
So as I said before we came on, a big Northampton Saints fan myself, going back in time. I remember watching Northampton Saints when Buck Shelford was playing. That's going back a few years. So
I think
really,
that's way before me.
yeah. So let's start, as I always do, by just asking what inspiring leadership looks like to you.
I think there's two sides to what I do and how leadership looks. And I've got the leadership side of things with my team. So that's my two assistants and more often than not a television match official as well. And I've got to make sure that when I go out onto that pitch, I provide an environment for them before, during and after, for them to feel comfortable in challenging me, in being a part of that game, and really kind of buy into the flow of what's happening with that game as well. So the last thing I want to do is kind of go out there and nobody really knows where we are, how we're pitching ourselves. So it's for me to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is where I'm going with it. And this is how I want you to come along with me. And this is how I'm going to make that happen as well. And so it's really kind of taking those people on that journey, creating that followership and really kind of creating that environment. People are comfortable, we challenge, and we're comfortable in challenging each other as well. So that goes from me to them and them to me. And then you've got the other side of things as well, which I think we sometimes as referees neglect, is that we're also almost the leader of that entire game. So we go out there and we want to get that player buy-in. So it's about how do we communicate? How do we pitch ourselves? How do we make it so that the players feel comfortable in coming in asking questions? And so there's those two sides that finally balance with each other. And there's also that understanding with players as well, is that there is that line, there is that cut-off point. Okay, well, now I need you to, that's enough now. Like, I need you to stop doing that now. And if we can find that relationship and build that relationship with those players, then it means that when you do say that, or when you do need something to happen, already they're working hard to do that for you. And like I'm working hard to work with them as well.
So that's really insightful, actually, Sarah. So in terms of getting people, especially you talk about respect here, about knowing where the line is, in terms of setting your expectations and setting the standard that you want in that particular game, how do you go about doing that?
Again, it's about building relationships, and that goes on and off the pitch as well. At the end of the day, I'm dealing with human beings and we are all very similar to each other. That's in an office, on a rugby pitch, or elsewhere in a different profession. At the end of the day, it's about how do we manage people, and how do we manage people in the height of performance where there are lots of different factors. So they've got about winning, they've got about the energy that's going around beforehand, before all of this happened, the crowds that are there as well. Yeah. So it's about how do we get that balance and how do we pitch ourselves? And at the end of the day, that there's one thing that I like to live by: treat someone how you want to be treated. So if I don't treat those players well, how can I expect them to treat me well? And I don't automatically go onto a rugby pitch and say, you must respect me. I know those players have respect for the role that I play within that game, but that doesn't mean necessarily they've got respect for me as a person. So how do I build that? And how do I build that in a very short space of time? Well, it's about communicating on the right level. It's you're not pitching yourself any higher or any lower to anyone else. You're actually finding a level that you can both work within. And then we take that out onto the pitch. How do I communicate with them? Well, there's no good me shouting at them, because we know how that works with humans, and more often than not, we switch off. So again, working, and it is finding as well that balance of what does the game look like? Are these players wanting to engage a little bit more? Are they happy to be left alone doing their own thing? Or do I really need to say, okay, well, I've got to step in now? So we have that almost like that teacher element of things where you're a class that's getting slightly unruly. You've got to say something, bring it all back in again.
That's really, really interesting. I suppose the best referees are the ones you don't notice, aren't they? Because I suppose if a referee's always in the game and nebbing in and nebbing in and nebbing in, the game's just going to be, broken up, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's about connecting yourself to that game. And it sounds very cliche, but it's understanding what that game's doing. I'm not there to be the limelight of that game. What I'm there to do is facilitate for those players, the ones that are that limelight, if you like, to be able to play that game and provide a real nice spectacle for, say, someone like yourself watching Northampton. There's no good me stepping in and being the life and soul of the party, because nobody wants that. So how do I get in that game? How do I get in and connect to that game with the players, stakeholders, and what's happening in front of me?
And do you have a chat to the teams prior to going onto the field to relay your expectations? Or is it just you kind of see what's going on and you talk to them throughout the game itself?
Yeah, look, we've got a bit of both. So I definitely try to communicate with players beforehand. I don't go out with a script. I don't sit them all down and say, this is what I want at this time and this is how we're going to do it. No, not at all. But when you start to kind of communicate with players, start to have a chat, those off the record chats, just kind of, oh, how's everything going? How are you? How's the pandemic treated you? So on and so forth. You're building those relationships. They understand that you're a human being then, and it relays then out onto the pitch as well. And then the first kind of 10, 20 minutes of a game, you're trying to sort of work each other out. What do you want as a referee? What do I want from them as players? And how do we work that together? So it's crucial that you get that message across in the first little bit. And then more often than not, you start to see those teams more and more. They understand who you are more and more. And you're just honest with people, and you just lay out, look, this is how I do things. You know that from the last game. This is what we're going to do in this game. Is there any questions you guys have got? Is there anything you want from me? And we have that dialogue.
It's really interesting because it really aligns to the coaching that I do. And one of the most forgotten aspects of coaching, I find, Sarah, is contracting. So actually talking to the people about what you're going to be wanting, how it's going to look, whenever that is, usually before the process, but during the process as well. And just bringing people back all the time. Well, this is what we said. This is the kind of thing that I'm expecting. And in coaching, and whether it's education and working people or beyond, that doesn't happen a lot. People go straight into something without actually telling people the way it's going to be or the expectations. So I suppose when you finished a game, do you then have a debrief with your team around some of the decisions that you made or some of the things that came out of it?
Absolutely, 100%. Right. And that's probably the biggest part of my game. I do the bits and bobs on the pitch, but then we've got to understand why we've done that. And we've got to understand what that looked like. What could we do better in the future? What could we change? And that doesn't necessarily mean that something's gone wrong. It might mean that actually we can streamline this in a different sort of way. And without that review process, there's no way that you can then learn. There's no way that you can kind of go back. And I think that sometimes is what we miss. And I know from my experience within business is that we go, okay, we've planned all this. We've had meetings about meetings. We've executed. But then we kind of move on to the next project. And we miss this fundamental part that is probably the biggest driving force of my job now, is sitting down. Let's look back. What did we do? How did we do it? And what could we change, positively or negatively? And then we learn and we say, okay, well, the next time we're going to take that in and we're going to do this and we're going to make it so that this works. And I think, having studied and having looked into the police force and the ways in which they make decisions. Now, my job is, yes, it's high pressure, but it's no threat to life, albeit that sometimes we think there is. When you look at policing, they've got threat to life. They've got to look after the community. So how do we look? Well, yeah, what's one of their fundamentals? They sit down, they review what they did. They document what they did. They document that review. They move forward. They work on what happens next time.
I suppose you hear a lot about care of duty, don't you, in rugby and other sports at the moment? And, some people say, oh, rugby's gone soft because you can't do certain things now and everything, HIA, head assessment, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of a duty of care, have you been in a position when you've been playing the game when you think, no, I've really got to interject there because this is not, good for someone's health?
Absolutely. Now, look, the professional game at the moment is dealt with very differently. So they've got independent match day doctors. Yeah. They've got their home team doctors. They've got their physios. That's where I can step away and I can say, right, that's dealt with. They can do, I'm not a medical professional. I can just about put a plaster on my own finger. That's about it. But when
that's not bad, Sarah. You're doing well. It's the basics,
Yeah, exactly. I did have an accident with a cafetiere in lockdown, which sent me to A&E. So, but that's where they're dealt with. Now, I've had a situation before, not so long ago. I think it was about 2 years ago now, where I was doing a National League One game. So that's just before we tip into sort of the men's professional league, but it's still a very good quality of rugby. We don't have a match day doctor. We don't have Hawkeye, which is the really nice technology that they can use to look back at things. What we have is a physio and a load of players that are really keen to play rugby. And a guy took a knock. He stood up and he stumbled backwards. And you're reeling through and you're going, okay, I know this. I know what this looks like. I know how this plays out next because I've done the training. I do my courses. We look at those types of things and that triggers, okay, well, he's stumbled. He looks like he's had his bell rung. Okay, I don't know what, he's kind of stepping around. He's looking at you funny. So I had to step in and send him off the pitch because I wasn't comfortable that he could continue. And afterwards they came up to me and that was his physio and him and said, I'm glad you did that because I feel awful now and I think I need to sort of go and get checked out. So there's those types of things. Professionals dealt with very, very differently to community sort of level rugby. But there's still a duty of care because if you don't look after the professionals that people can see, that people have access to, how can you expect the community level to buy into that as well?
In terms of decisions, though, what I suppose incidents or what about the rugby is the most difficult to make decisions on during a game?
I think the game in general. It depends. Some games you can have a game where there's very little decisions that need to be made. You can kind of cruise through, or not on autopilot, but you can kind of just go with the game and it's dealing with itself. And then other games you have to referee from minute 1 all the way through to minute 83 is probably when you're going to finish off. And I've experienced both sides of those. And I did a game recently where I didn't stop refereeing until I got back into the changing room because there was so much. You can't take your eyes off anything. They're doing all sorts of things, but it's about kind of engaging with that and understanding I'm going to have to referee. They know I'm going to have to referee, so I'm not going to stop doing that because the minute you stop doing that and you've pitched yourself wrong, that's when you start losing the game a little bit. That's when things start getting a little bit messy, and that's my sort of experience of it. But definitely understanding what that game's doing and why it's doing it is paramount.
So was it about rugby refereeing that you enjoy, Sarah?
God only knows. God only knows. I get asked this question all the time and people say, well, what do you enjoy about it? I've no idea, but the minute I step on that pitch, I love it. And it's kind of, you get on there and you almost go, this is my sort of place. This is my space. This is my bubble. I'm enjoying what's happening. And don't get me wrong, there's times where you really do get put under pressure and you do get, decisions wrong and what have you. And it's not the most comfortable place to be. But at the same time, you still come off, you still learn, you still understand, and it makes it all worth it at the end of the day.
And rugby is a really inclusive community, and it's got these values which have been upheld through many, many, many years. But I suppose it being the world's first female referee, what kind of issues potentially have you encountered by being a female referee of a men's game when no one's really done that before?
Changing rooms tend to be the worst one.
Do you want to go down this path? Okay.
Yeah. So whose changing room can you go in? When can we go in that changing room? So on and so forth. No, I just look. It's no different to any other profession that you go into. I worked within an office environment from Monday, Friday, 9 till 5 previous to this. And I still came across hurdles. I still came across things that were going to challenge me. And I think if you don't have that, I know for me as a person, then that's not the right job for me. Because if you're not challenged, if you're not pushed, if you're not pushed to a place where you think the script is going to change and this is not how this was meant to play out, and you don't adapt to that, then you kind of become very narrow-minded. And that's what I want to avoid. I want to make sure that I've got a big picture, a big understanding of things, and I can take that wherever I go. So
what I'm hearing you say, that there hasn't been any barriers to you becoming the first female referee of men's games and the first ever professional female referee?
No, nobody ever sat me down and said, no, because you're a woman. And that's at the end of the day. What I did is I turned around and said, I don't care if I'm a male, female, or indifferent. What I'm out there to do is referee a game of rugby. Now, when I go out, I'm Sara Cox, the referee. When I work with other referees, that's Luke Pearce referee, that's Craig Maxwell Keys referee, that's a male referee, that's a female referee, so on and so forth. We've got a job to do. And if I'm in the background doing the same things, I'm hitting the same fitness levels, then there's no reason why I can't get there.
And in terms of who inspired you, Sarah, to become a rugby referee, who would it be?
Do you know, people ask me this all the time, and I can't pinpoint it to one person to say, absolutely, that was the person that made me do it. I was lucky enough to be of an era that there were 2 other females that were kind of paving the way for me, if you like. And I was like, okay, cool. This is, I've got a nice sort of way to go. There's a nice track to follow within this. And then we got to a point where that track finished and that ended and they retired. And I kind of took on the Olympic torch, if you like, and carried that, continue forward. And it was kind of them saying, okay, well, I can do this. And then me with a bit of grit and determination to go, okay, well, let's see where else I can go with this. But the main thing for me is looking in at, the likes of the England Red Roses at the moment and seeing how professional they are and where they've come from and where they want to go. That's the sort of inspiration for me to turn around and say, I trialed with some of those girls that are now out there. They are the face of female rugby. I want to follow in their footsteps. I want to have that sort of understanding of rugby. I want to have that level of fitness. And just because I'm a referee doesn't mean that I don't work as hard. It doesn't mean as much to me. It's just different. And that's the inspiration for me.
I suppose in terms of fitness, again, you don't think of a referee being fit, do you really? But then, of course, they have to be. So what's your kind of regime like?
It's probably about, at the moment, it's about 7 days a week. And, it's interesting because there's not a lot, we're not in the limelight. We're not doing those sort of background sort of videos where people can see what we get up to. We sort of just exist, go about our business. We turn up on a match day and then we go home again. But it's a lot more to that. There's a lot of review process. There's a lot of fitness that goes into the back of that. And because I've got to stay up with the game, but not only have I got to stay up with the game, I've also got to make decisions under pressure and fatigue. So I've got lots of external points that are going to come in and make for it being a more difficult situation. So the fitter I am, the more capacity I have to make those decisions and make sensible and followable decisions. But some people would argue differently.
So how do you get yourself fit? I mean, is this about, circuits? Is it about doing things under pressure, fatiguing yourself, and then doing more to make decisions, really good decisions under pressure? Or is it about just general fitness?
General fitness.
Right.
And functioning and getting your body to function in a way that you're comfortable. We do a lot of running, and so we don't take impact. Well, not purposely anyway. But we've definitely got to make sure, okay, well, can I get to that next breakdown? Can I make a decision sensibly? And then that functionality with your body, and then recovery with your body as well, and making sure that you're ready for the next week and you're ready for the training the week to come and what have you. So it's staying on top of stuff and making sure that you have that global fitness.
Do you get all the physios and all the massages that the players get?
Yeah, we have access to that type of stuff. Yeah, probably not some of the technologies that some clubs have, but we do have access to those types of things. Yeah.
Because I was watching, it might be a documentary or something about the Wales men's team, and they were doing this really cold training or cold recovery where they're going at -50 into these kind of little
cryo chambers.
That's the one, yeah. And then it just looked awful. I mean, they're putting hats on and socks on, and that was it. And I thought, good grief, that's painful. Do you get access to those kind of modern technology and recovery things?
Not quite. We're not quite there just yet, and we're quite geographically dispersed as well. So it makes it difficult if you were to do that for everyone. And there's 9 of us now. That would be very expensive. It would be something that not everyone would get on with, so on and so forth. So we try and tailor it around individuals and making sure that we have those provisions, but within the limits of what we can and where we can get, basically.
So you finish a game, you have a little debrief, and then you go home and you put your feet up for a couple of days and just stretch and do a bit of yoga, whatever, and get ready for the next one and do a bit of training in between.
Yeah, so it tends to be a Saturday you do a game. Sunday will be, for me, I like to kind of potter around in the pool, get in the jacuzzi, that type of hot, cold sort of, I guess, therapy, if you like. Then Monday, you hit the gym again. So I'm looking Monday-wise, I'm back to the weights. Tuesday, same again. Wednesday, I'm looking at probably some cardio, if not a day off. Thursday, we're doing a bit of both. And then Friday, it's an activation sort of power session, and then into Saturday again.
I'm exhausted listening to that, Sarah. That sounds relentless. I don't know, I'm feeling my age, I think, after this lockdown, but that's there's a lot to that. When do you actually have a bit of, maybe say post-season? Do you have some time where you can maybe sit on the beach somewhere and just get some sun and just relax a bit?
Supposedly, yes. But for me, I go round, up until recently, it was kind of an all year round type thing. So there'd be a few weeks here and there that I get. And look, don't get me wrong, I have been on holiday a few times to different places. But with regards to myself, I'm the only one that is effectively professional in the 15s game and the 7s game. Whereas if you look at the likes of some of my other colleagues, they'll just focus themselves on that 15s game. So I tend to do both. So I tend to kind of, winter tends to be the 15 side of stuff, and then we go into the summer with a little bit of overlap, tends to be the 7s as well.
And in terms of your approach for the 15 and the 7s, what's the difference?
Apart from the fact that there's far less people on the pitch in the 7s game, there's a lot faster. It depends, to be honest. It depends if you're going out for a full tournament or you're going out for just a couple of games more in Europe. It depends where you are, but the fitness, it changes slightly. So with 7s, it tends to be short, sharp sprint stuff, whereas 15s is about that sort of longer game, that capacity side of stuff. So if you can combine the two of them, it makes for the fitness element of things to kind of take you to that next level.
Do the 7s go? I mean, I've been to Hong Kong 7s, and that was fantastic. Do the 7s go Middle East? Is it some of the Pacific Islands? Does it go all around the world, is it?
All over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, all over the place.
South Africa as well, isn't it?
Yeah, there's one in South Africa. We've done Canada, America, where else there? London. There's loads, Dubai, loads of different places.
And then do you have a little extended stay there if you want to? So you do the Dubai Sevens and maybe stay a couple of extra days, do some sightseeing and then come back?
Yeah, definitely. So when I went to the Olympics in 2016 in Rio, we ended up extending for another 2 weeks out there and just going around and exploring. And there are definitely some places, like I think it was 2 years ago now, that we were in France, in Biarritz, extended another week out there just to go and explore. And you might as well make the most of it. And I'm quite glad I did now, because you kind of look at it now, it's in, get it done and get out again.
What was it like being part of the Olympics?
Amazing. It was a massive culture shock, that's for sure, because the way that we live and the way that we're lucky enough to live is very, very different to how it was over in Rio. But at the same time, they did a very, very good job of putting that massive event on and making it quite a big success for them.
In terms of I'm retiring you here, Sarah, but in terms of a shelf life for a referee, is it 30s? Is that kind of where it kind of sits before your
Hopefully not, because then I'm retiring now.
Before your body starts falling to pieces and you can't keep doing. I mean, I don't know. It's how old do you go as a referee?
Exactly. How long's a piece of string? It's whether you can keep yourself fit. So if you can only keep yourself fit to your early 30s and you start dropping off and you start having conversations about, okay, well, I don't think you're quite there anymore, then that's your shelf life. If you can go into your 50, 55 because you can keep yourself fit and you stay within those parameters that they set, then your shelf life is there. Again, it's because we don't take impact. It's not quite as brutal on the body. It's just that I think a few of us will end up with hip and knee replacements from the amount of running that we've done.
That's something to look forward to.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get old at some point.
Oh, indeed. And I was reading about you, actually. Your dad was part of a local rugby club, wasn't he, when you were younger? And you also played a little bit of golf. Is that true?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
How do you get on at golf?
Yeah, not too bad. So it was sort of heading down a route of looking at scholarships and things in different countries and trying to pursue that side of things. And I think my dad looks back now and wishes that I'd probably gone down the golfing route, because it would have meant that he'd had a nice Porsche on the driveway and a big house.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's changed a little bit. Well, I was very young and didn't really want that commitment to something that I wasn't really enjoying.
Were you really sporty at school, Sarah?
Oh, good, yeah. Academia was not my strong point. That was my sister's. So she had the brains and I had the sporting element of that thing. So yeah, like I came away with some decent grades, but sport was definitely the thing that kept me ticking over, kept me sort of in school and interested.
But you're doing a master's at the moment, aren't you?
I am, right? For my sins. Blimey. I avoided university the first time round, and now as I've gotten older, I've decided to go back and do it. But no, it's great. It's completely different learning, and it's something that has really opened my eyes and definitely made me a better referee for it.
So what are you studying exactly?
So it's called Performance Enhancement of Sports Officiating. Okay. So it's a psychology degree and is linked a lot to sort of high pressure decision making. It's looking at kind of culture. It looks at leadership. It looks at lots and lots of different elements and how you pull those together and make it work, sort of thing. But currently, I'm looking at a decision model, hence the policing side of stuff from policing that is used at the moment, and seeing if that works within refereeing and seeing if it's something that can transfer over.
So what's that decision model then exactly?
It's called the National Decision Model.
Okay.
So it's something that the police force use, and it's basically around big incidents, but they also use it as well in sort of smaller learning environments, what have you. So it's in a nutshell, it follows 5 stages in a wheel. and you basically go around and you ask yourself specific questions that prompt certain answers. So it's about understanding what are the threats, what are your options, and most importantly, that's the one that we would focus on in rugby. What are my options? How can I get to a decision? What is going on around me, and making and forcing referees in a review environment to really focus on other elements rather than just specifically the decision. Now you're asking them to look at, okay, well, what was a potential threat here? So that could range from, this could be a red card if it goes wrong, all the way through to this could be play on if this works. So it's understanding that environment that's around them. Then it's looking at what options they have at certain environments. So, okay, well, at this next ruck, what are the options I have for this player not rolling away? Well, I can do nothing, all the way through to the fact that I could red card someone. We know that red card is not the best option. So that's the least sort of favourable option that you have. But it's understanding that you have that option and what's in your toolbox, if you like, all the way through to finishing off and reviewing what you've done. Okay, so this is what happened. What would I do differently in the future? Well, after identifying the threats, identifying my options, I now know that I have an extra option at the end of this, so that when they go back into a game, they understand and they've built a mental model of what that should look like. So if that scenario triggers again, they already know how to order the information they have and how to produce an outcome from that.
Sounds like you're enjoying the academic side now, Sarah.
It sounds like it.
Wow.
It's a love-hate relationship.
I always think at that kind of master's level, as you mentioned, it's really important to align what you're studying with what you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can see that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And otherwise you can end up in a bit of a hole of not enjoying things, and being able to kind of apply it to what I'm actually doing and having that real life experience. And I can quote empirically, because I have been there, I have done it. It makes things a lot easier rather than sort of tapping around trying to learn this stuff. Well, actually, I know a large percentage of it. It's now, how do I start honing in? How do I start streamlining that stuff?
And do you get funding from the from the RFE or different places, and say, okay, if you're going to do a master's and it's going to feed back into the professional developments in our institution, that we're going to give you some money for that? Or is it something you just do independently?
No, I did this one independently. So I identified for myself that I probably need to diversify slightly. So it's no good going through an elite professional sport and a job that's not normal, if you like, whatever we want to term normal as.
Yeah.
And say, okay, well, it's no good at the end of this, because eventually it will end. That bubble will pop. I will come out the other side of this type of stuff. I can't go to a business and them ask me, well, what have you done? Well, I sat doing nothing, basically, and I had some free time on my hands at times. What I actually wanted to do is say, okay, well, I can now come out of sport and say, not only do I have this experience on the field, I also have this experience off the field, but I've got academia to back that as well. So I have a CV now that's starting to stand out from the pile, rather than it just being, okay, well, that's lovely that you've been in elite sport, but what are you going to bring to my business? I can actually say that's what I'm going to bring.
So it's really interesting that you're already kind of future-proofing your career going forward. So in terms of what you'd like to do after you hang up your boots, you've mentioned there about business and maybe, the decision making, etc. What appeals to you?
Lots of different things. And I've always said this when I came out of school straight into sort of the business side of stuff, is that I didn't want to pigeonhole myself down one route. And I think that was some of the reason why I didn't go to university the first time round, because I almost pigeonholed myself into, well, you have to study this because of this, and then you will produce this. And it was about, for me, just getting experience of lots of different things, understanding how different businesses work, understanding how people work. And I was lucky enough to in one of my first, I say, proper jobs, that I had an MD that really bought into what I was trying to do, and she gave me a project that was to them worth a couple of £1 million, and she said, go and play around with it and see what you can come up with in not so many words. So I was lucky enough with that. That gave me some experience to push into the next business, and I ended up going into the last job that I had in an office as the MD's PA and came out the head of marketing. So God only knows how that happened. I think it was more I fell into the position and I was the only one, really.
Sounds superb.
Yeah, it was good fun, actually. Really good fun.
That's brilliant. And just a couple of quick fire questions for you, Sarah. In terms of your favourite all-time rugby player, who would it be and why?
I mean, I grew up in the time that Johnny Wilkinson was kind of basically world rugby, full stop. Him, and then moving into sort of your Dan Carters and things like that. And I think for me, looking at Johnny and looking back as a kid, it was how that commitment and that drive to keep going. Now, don't get me wrong. Johnny's one end of the scale, and that's probably an extreme. And I think a few times I've heard him on podcasts say that is him, and it's how extreme you can get, basically. But for me, it's really looking in and saying, okay, well, it's not just about this. It's the drive and determination and never to give up and to keep that ball rolling all the time and to develop and gain experiences. So I think it was more around the sort of background of why he would do things. He wanted to make himself better, but at the same time learning that there has to be a balance. And I think for me, it showed a little bit that's personally not what I would want to do. I don't want to sort of go that far into, okay, there's nothing else exists but rugby. Because for me, it was about gathering life experiences as well and understanding that, like I said earlier, that big picture of things. So I loved and I took little bits from him and the way in which he did stuff and sort of brought it into how I want to work, but equally at the same time, still understanding from some of my friends and some of the people that are around me that there is more to life than just sport.
Yeah, I mean, it was. He speaks about it kind of driving himself into the ground a bit, doesn't it? He's got a bit too much on reflection, but yeah, what a player. In terms of feedback, what feedback has most fueled your learning, Sarah?
There's lots of feedback. There's lots of positive and negative feedback, I guess.
I didn't say criticism. I said feedback.
Yeah, it's feedback and feed forward. Look, there's lots of different things. There's lots of ways that you'll get feedback, and there's lots of different platforms that can come across, right from social media all the way through to your coach and the way in which you're doing it. But some of that has got to come from yourself and you feeding back into your career and how you can do things and drive forward. So it's taking, again, little bits of information because you can learn so much from so many different people. And it's about taking those good bits, the bits that you want, and saying, okay, well, I really like that about that person. So I want to take that and I want to make it my own and then move forward with it. Because you want to be your own person, don't get me wrong, but there's so much experience and there's so many people that carry such good things with them that if you didn't take bits of information from them, how can you keep learning? How can you keep being flexible, diversifying and moving forward? So it's just about taking little bits of feedback, binning the stuff that you don't need, but moving forward with the stuff that you do. So
that's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Definitely, to make who you want to be and how you're comfortable being.
Fantastic. Okay, and lastly, I know I keep trying to retire you here, so I don't mean to, but looking back on your career thus far, what piece of advice would you give yourself at the beginning?
Take every single opportunity that's given to you and everything that they hand to you, big or small, just take it, because one thing that the pandemic, I think, has taught a lot of people is that if it can all be taken away from you in an instant. And elite sport is probably one of those as well, is that 1 minute you can be flying high and you can be enjoying, you can be at the top of your career, and then the next minute, you found yourself without a job. So it's very easy picks you up, but it very easily puts you down as well. So it's about taking those experiences when they come and enjoying doing that.
Thanks, Sarah. You've been utterly engaging today. Really, really interesting speaking to you. Loads of nuggets of information there about leadership as well. So thank you so much. Where are you off to next with your games?
So I'm off to Ireland tomorrow to referee Ireland v France Women's Six Nations. And then we'll see what happens after that. We're yet to have the appointments come across, so I'm waiting for that.
How much notice do you get?
It used to be a little bit more. So it used to be probably about 4 weeks, but we're really at the moment realistically running about 2 weeks beforehand, because everything is changing constantly. And this is the most we've ever known the landscape to move about. And 1 minute you think you're fine, and then the next minute you're kind of having another swab taken because you've got to go somewhere else. So it's just about 2 weeks at the moment.
Yeah, straight. I've signed up to go and see the Lions in South Africa just for 2 tests in the summer. Well, I did sign up, but it's one of my bucket list things to do. But I can't see it. Nothing's been official yet, as you know, but I can't see things happening or full stadiums. So I think everyone's just waiting for certain things in different countries, aren't they?
Oh, massively. And I think that's the same for everyone, but at least we've got something to aim for. And if that means that, again, out of all of this, if we've sort of started to streamline things and understand that the world does change, I think we can probably come out the other side of it. But we've also got to remember that we've been through world wars, we've been through Spanish flus, we've been through a lot of other things. It just happens to be that this generation, it was our time, and how we diversify, I think it could really kick us into being something special.
Yeah, fantastic. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, Sarah. You've been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you very much for having me.
If you're interested in elevating your leadership practice in partnership with Pursue through our coaching and leadership development packages, or would like to connect to discuss any of the topics on the show, please send me an email at hello@pursue.com or visit our website pursue.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Nicholas Mackay or Pursue. And if you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and spread the word. We are proud to be developing a truly global community. Take care and look forward to speaking to you again soon.